The truth is, I met a man who was more successful and younger than you. I hope you're not angry with me. My name is Adam Chaffins. I'm 45 years old, and I've realized I took too long to understand that some people don't destroy us all at once. They erase us slowly. But when everything turned to dust, I discovered that it was precisely from the ashes that I needed to be reborn. The sound of the knife hitting the wooden board was almost hypnotic. Tick, tick, tick. The onion pieces piled up beside the sharp blade, releasing a pungent smell that already made my eyes burn. I was cooking to distract my mind, something simple, just to keep my hands busy and avoid the silence. The radio was playing softly, some random instrumental jazz. It was one of those ordinary Tuesday nights where nothing seems important until everything changes. The phone vibrated on the counter. I looked without hurry. It was covered by a thin layer of flour, and my damp hands hesitated for a second. I grabbed a dish towel, wiped my fingers, and cleaned the screen. A notification. Nothing out of the ordinary. But the name, Claire. Her name still sent that involuntary chill, as if my body knew something my mind refused to accept. The screen showed only a snippet of the message. Adam. I opened it. The full message filled the screen as if it had been written with a knife. Adam. I've met someone. He's younger, more successful, and he makes me feel alive again. I deserve this. Good luck. I stood still. The knife slipped from my hand and fell with a metallic sound that seemed to echo throughout the kitchen. The radio kept playing, indifferent. Before I could even think, the phone vibrated again. Bank transfer of $180,000 completed. It took me 2 seconds to understand. Then reality hit me like a punch. The joint account. No, I whispered, almost voiceless. I ran to the office. The floor seemed farther with each step. My fingers trembled as I typed the password on the laptop. I opened the browser, logged into the banking app, scanned with my phone. Login authorized. Screen loading. My heart was beating in my chest like a war drum. Balance, $0. No, it can't be. I whispered, the words slipping out like laments. Claire, what did you do? That number. That damn zero. It stared at me like an empty eye, mocking me. I sat down, or rather I collapsed into the swivel chair. The smell of the onion burning in the pan started to fill the room. I didn't move a muscle. The air seemed trapped in my lungs. On the screen, a blue button shone. Speak with a manager. I clicked without thinking. Good evening, Mr. Adam. How can I assist you? There was a transfer, I stammered, of $184,000. It left my joint account. Is this legal? One moment, sir. Checking the details. The wait was tormenting. Sir, the transaction was authorized by one of the account holders, said the attendant with the empathy of a machine. It's within the contractual terms. But she emptied everything. There's nothing left. Is this fair? Would you like to file a formal dispute? Silence. No. I hung up. Reality hit like an avalanche. Claire didn't just leave me. She erased me. She erased our history, our retirement plan, the trip to Mexico that never happened, the dreams we pretended to share. She deleted me. I got up. I went to the kitchen. The bitter smell of the burnt onion filled my throat. I threw everything away. Dinner, utensils, the towel I used to dry my hands. All went in the trash with silent rage. I sat back down. Lights off. Only the glow of the laptop screen reflected in the window glass. My image there, pale, stunned, a 45-year-old man betrayed, robbed, forgotten. For the first time, I saw myself not as Claire's husband, but as something in ruins. I picked up the phone again, opened WhatsApp, saw her message. My hands trembled, but I clicked to open the conversation. Claire was online. I wrote, "Why?" The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. then came back. Because I needed to do this for me. A period. Surgical. You were complacent. I was dying slowly with you. I felt nausea rise from my stomach. I wrote, "You destroyed me." Nothing. She went offline. It was there in that emptiness, that digital echo of abandonment, that I understood what she had really taken from me. It wasn't just the money. It was the structure, the ground, the trust. She took who I thought I was, and all that was left was this. Silence. Emptiness. A man in the shadows, staring at the computer screen and his own reflection in the glass. But an inner voice whispered something different, almost imperceptible, something that said, "She left you with nothing, but now you can be anything." The phrase echoed in my mind like a spark. Outside, a distant siren cut through the night. The world went on, and inside me, something started to move, still fragile, still uncertain, but real. A spark. What she didn't know is that the moment she destroyed me, she freed me. And beneath the rubble, a new Adam was beginning to open his eyes, colder, more aware, and hungry for a new beginning. The days following the collapse were a fog. I woke up not remembering how I had slept. I dressed on autopilot, clothes always a bit wrinkled, tie crooked, hair lackluster. The bathroom mirror reflected a stranger looking at me with a mix of pity and anger. I was the ghost of myself. At work, I became the invisible man. I dragged myself through the halls like a poorly programmed zombie, bumping into chairs, forgetting meetings, typing the wrong passwords. My boss asked if I was okay. I smiled and said, "Just tired." Lie. People noticed, of course they did, but no one dared to ask. It was easier to avoid the discomfort. Let broken Adam occupy his little gray corner at the company and pretend everything was normal. Until one rainy Tuesday, one of those days when the sky seems to weigh down on the city, someone crossed the wall of silence. Carlos from legal. Tall, thin, always with a mocking air, but the kind of mockery that hides a sharp intelligence. He entered my office without knocking, balancing a steaming cup of coffee and a look full of curiosity. "Adam," he said as if we were in the middle of an old conversation. "Got a minute?" I nodded vaguely. He sat in the chair across from me, crossed his legs, and took a slow sip of coffee, as if savoring the moment more than the drink. "Dude," he started, fiddling with the mug's handle. "Did you know Claire's posting pictures with some guy named Vinicius Prado?" My stomach churned, but my expression didn't change. I just kept looking at the computer screen where an unfinished email blinked at the cursor. Looks like they're traveling together. Cancun, infinity pools, champagne. That Instagram feed life, you know? I still didn't react. Carlos leaned forward a little, studying my face. This name, Vinicius Prado. Doesn't it sound familiar? And then it clicked, like lightning in the dark. Vinicius Prado. My heart raced, out of nowhere. It was as if someone had screamed inside my chest. The name spun in my mind like a siren. Vinicius Prado, fintech, report, compliance. I finally lifted my eyes and met Carlos's gaze. "Prado," I murmured. "That guy from Veritech?" Carlos broke into a slow smile, almost satisfied. "Knew you'd recognize it." I went to my drawer, grabbed a worn folder. I rummaged through the documents like a man searching for a hidden weapon. I found what I was looking for, a 6-month-old risk assessment report. Vinicius Prado was the CEO of Veritech, a promising fintech trying to go public. But there was a footnote, discreet, ignored by almost everyone. Possible involvement in untraceable transfers via cryptocurrency. Signs of money laundering and offshore subsidiaries. I closed the folder and remained silent. Carlos stood, finished his coffee in one gulp. "Just thought you'd want to know," he said before leaving. "But if you want me to pretend I never came in here, just say the word." When he left, the sound of the door closing echoed like a war drum. Claire hadn't just replaced me. She had allied herself with a criminal. And worst of all, she had used my name, my trust, my money, as bait, as a shield. What had once been sadness was now turning into something else, denser, hotter. An old feeling, dormant for years, that was beginning to stir deep within my chest. I went home earlier that night. The sky was still heavy, the clouds spitting fine rain that ran down the car windows. I didn't turn on the radio. Only the sound of the wipers scraping the windshield kept me company. I arrived, tossed the folder on the couch, and went straight to the computer. I took a deep breath. Focused. I opened access to the company's internal system. My privileges as a manager of analysis allowed me to access confidential reports. I began searching for everything related to Veritech. Contracts, mentions, internal emails. I created a mental map, connecting names, dates, values. I opened Claire's data, the joint account statements, the Google Drive files she had shared with me months ago, before the betrayal. And there it was, a spreadsheet disguised as weddingbudget.xlsx. I opened it. But it wasn't about a wedding. It was about financial transactions, transfers, foreign accounts. Some names matched the same recipients from the Veritech report. Claire was laundering money with him. I froze. The clock flashed 1:42 a.m. My head ached, but one idea, sharp as a knife blade, cut through everything. She used me. As a pawn. As a convenient fool. But this would end now. I wasn't just going to get back what was mine. I was going to turn the tide. I was going to bring Claire down. And with her, the handsome CEO and his shiny offshore accounts. But for that, I needed someone who knew the dark paths where money flows when no one is looking. Someone who knew where to push, when to strike, and how to leave traces that looked like accidents. I grabbed the phone, scrolled through the contacts until I found a name I hadn't seen in years. Tiago Diaz. The guy was a computer genius back in high school. Almost got arrested for hacking the school system to change a grade. Now he worked as a freelance cybersecurity consultant, ethical hacker, or at least that's how he sold himself. I took a deep breath, called. It rang twice before he answered. Adam? His voice was surprised and a little suspicious. Long time, man. What's up? Tiago, I need your help, and I can't explain over the phone, but it's serious, very serious. Pause. Is there risk involved? Lots. Another silence. Then his quiet laugh. I'm in. When and where? Tomorrow, 6:12 a.m. I'll send you the address. I hung up. I closed my eyes. My body was still shaking. But it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline. And it was there, on that rainy night, that everything began to change. Because if she took everything from me, then I was going to take it back. Every penny, every lie, every damn smile she thought she would flaunt with the money that was mine. And no one would see it coming. The phone was warm in my hand, as if it knew that the call I was about to make wasn't just a request for help, but the beginning of a silent war. I scrolled through my contacts until I found his name. Tiago Diaz. We hadn't spoken in years. The last memory I had was of a smoky night at the corner LAN house playing Counter-Strike while he hacked the school's website just to prove he could. I took a deep breath. Hit call. It rang 3 times. 4. Then, the familiar voice, with that same mocking tone he had at 17. Hello? Tiago? It's Adam. Adam Reiner. From the IT class of 2002. There was a 2-second silence, then a genuine nostalgic laugh. Man. He drew out the word as if pulling a forgotten memory from the depths of a drawer. Reiner. The guy who owes me a pizza from that night I was plugged into the LAN house server for 18 hours. You gonna pay with interest? I smiled, the first real smile in weeks. With interest, fines, and secrets. But before, I need your help. Serious help. The kind that might push us out of the legal boundaries. The silence that followed wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. Go on, he said, his tone changing. More sober, sharper. I told him everything. No embellishments. From Claire's message to Vinicius Prado's name, the fintech, the stolen money, the layered betrayal. And finally, what I had discovered. She was involved in a money laundering scheme. And worse, she had dragged me in indirectly. Tiago didn't make a joke. He just said, "Send me everything. Statements, screenshots, reports. I'll set up a structure here. Encrypted. Nothing's getting out." We met that same night at a 24-hour co-working space he used as a lab, a room disguised as an office with more monitors than chairs. It smelled like strong coffee and soldering chips. He sat at the machine like a conductor in front of an orchestra. His hands danced across the keyboard as if the keys were sensitive strings. "She's arrogant," he murmured, analyzing Claire's digital behavior in real time. Uses the same password for almost everything. Has folders with obvious names like Important Documents and Backup 2024. This is like playing with a puzzle. With each folder opened, each file recovered, more pieces appeared on the board. Accounts in Belize. Sequential transfers at odd hours outside the usual banking pattern. Cryptocurrency apps installed on her phone with transaction traces in currencies almost nobody knew. There was an account opened in her 18-year-old nephew's name, with a monthly movement of $38,000. When we cross-referenced with his name, we discovered he was listed as junior CEO at a newly created company. "This," Tiago pointed to the screen, his eyes gleaming with the excitement of someone who had just found a digital gold mine. "This is dynamite. If it falls into the right hand, Federal Revenue, Central Bank, even Interpol might want a taste." "And if I want to freeze everything?" I asked, my voice low, firm. Tiago looked at me, for the first time without irony. "Then we bring her castle down. But if you do that, there's no going back, Adam. There's already no going back." In the following days, my world began to change, quietly. Everything was executed with surgical precision. The first blow was the anonymous tip to the revenue with the right documents. Letterhead verified with detailed dates and times. The second came from the internal compliance system of a bank, where a contact of Tiago's planted the right doubt with the right person. It took just 48 hours for Claire's main account to be frozen preemptively. Transactions were suspended. Her corporate card, the one she used to fly and post Instagram stories of indulgences paid with dirty money, was declined at a restaurant in Madrid, according to the bank's location tracking alert. I knew this because I was reading her messages. With Tiago's permission, we hacked into her cloud backup. Everything was there. Conversations, screenshots, desperate audios. "Vinicius, everything's gone, the account's locked. Did you do something?" "I couldn't withdraw anything today. This isn't normal. We need to talk to the bank guy. This is going south." Her anxiety spilled out in every letter. The tone shifted from luxurious to desperate, and I read it all. In silence, like a ghost watching my own revenge being served in slow motion. Tiago called me one night. "We found one more thing." On the screen, a contract. Signed by her, authorizing the movement of funds from our joint account to an account in Vinicius's name. "This is gold," he said. "If you want to sue, we can prove financial coercion and breach of marriage contract. You can recover everything and expose her publicly." But I didn't want the circus. I wanted her to know. I wanted her to look me in the eyes for the first time without the emotional high ground, without the makeup of social media, without the air of superiority. I wanted her to see who had brought her down, and that chance came, sooner than I imagined. I received a notification in my work email, an invitation to a judicial reconciliation hearing. Claire had filed for a division request. Even after everything, she still wanted to negotiate formally what was left. Her audacity was a work of art. I replied, confirming my attendance. On the day, I dressed as I always did, simple, discreet. She arrived in an expensive blazer, eyes hidden behind sunglasses, and a lawyer who looked more like a Calvin Klein model. We sat across from each other, separated by a polished wooden table. She opened her mouth to say something, but I hesitated with a small smile. "Claire," I murmured. "How's Vinicius?" She froze. Her eyes searched for the lawyer, then returned to me. "How do you—" I leaned forward slowly. "I know everything. I know about the account in the Cayman Islands. I know about the contract. I know about the nephew. I know the whole dossier. And most importantly, I'm the one who froze everything." She turned pale. The lawyer whispered something to her, concerned. And at that moment, there was no more pain in me, only clarity. Peace. She tried to bury me, but she forgot I was a seed. And now, it was time to bloom alone. The sky was heavy that afternoon. Gray clouds piled up as if they too were engaged in an internal war. The air smelled of wet earth about to happen, and everything seemed suspended in time. I had been there for a few minutes, leaning against the hood of my car, watching the almost empty parking lot of the restaurant that had once been our Friday night refuge. Del Mare, the name still shone in worn neon, hanging crookedly, like the end of a poorly written story. There we had shared so many laughs, bottles of cheap wine, and promises that today would sound like jokes. And then I saw her, Claire. She got out of a luxury car she surely could no longer afford. She wore a well-tailored beige blazer, her high heels echoing like drum beats on the cracked asphalt. The oversized sunglasses covered half her face, but they couldn't hide the tension in her shoulders, nor the subtle tremor in her hands as she clutched her purse against her chest. She stopped a few steps from me, hesitant, as if she were walking through a minefield and every word could be the last before the explosion. "Adam?" Her voice came out thin, cracked. There was urgency there, and a barely disguised desperation. I looked up, calm, almost serene, like someone watching the end of a storm from a distance. "Claire," I replied, without emotion, just the light firmness of someone who had cried all they had to cry. She took a step forward. The heels sank slightly into the hot asphalt. It was as if the world itself was resisting her presence. She started, and her voice faltered. "You know what's happening, right? My accounts have been frozen. I'm being investigated, Adam. Vinicius. He disappeared. He's really gone. Cut contact. Left only a stupid note and a trail of debts." She ran a hand nervously through her hair. "I'm in the middle of something I don't understand, and I can't get out." We stood in silence for a few seconds, the kind of silence that weighs more than any shout. Then, she stared at me, finally removing her sunglasses. Her eyes were different, smaller, swollen, with a desperate gleam that had nothing to do with lust or conquest. It was the gleam of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. "Was it you?" she asked, almost in a whisper. "Tell me, was it you who did this?" I smiled, not mockingly, but with a bitter relief like someone signing the last page of a book that had cost too much. "Me," I repeated. "Claire, I'm just a man who lost everything and decided to learn how the system works. That's all." She opened her mouth, but the words didn't come. A dry sound escaped, maybe a sob, maybe anger, and she turned her face as if trying to deny it would erase the truth stamped on every detail she was discovering too late. "You don't know what I've been through," she insisted, trying to turn the game around. "You don't understand. I was suffocating, fading away. You just worked. You just lived in that routine. I needed to feel alive." "And now, do you?" I asked, not raising my voice. She fell silent, looked around as if someone would appear and save her. But no one came. Only the cold wind, which blew strongly, lifting a strand of her carefully arranged hair. She took a step back, tripping on her heel. She staggered, holding onto the rearview mirror of her own car to avoid falling. A perfect metaphor. You can't just destroy everything, Adam. This is cruel." Her voice trembled. "No, Claire," I murmured. Cruel was you turning 20 years of life into a goodbye note. Cruel was you reducing me to nothing, turning me into a bargaining chip for a criminal. I just returned the favor. She stared at me one more time, but now there was something new in her eyes. Fear. Not of me, but of herself. Of her own ruin. Of the clarity that had finally reached her. And then, without saying another word, she turned, got into the car, and drove off. No hurry. No looking back. The sound of the engine slowly faded and silence reclaimed the ghostly parking lot. I stayed there for a few more minutes, feeling the breeze touch my face like a caress. My shoulders no longer weighed as they once did. The anger had turned to dust. The sadness, a scar. And what was left there was peace. For the first time in many years, I felt whole. But the story still needed one last chapter, something that didn't involve revenge or confrontations. I needed to step off the stage, breathe, disappear for a while, reconnect with the man she tried to erase, and that I almost let die. That night, I wrote an email to work. Dear all, I am taking a leave, indefinite time, no cell signal, no notifications. I need to see mountains, lakes, and horizons too vast to fit on a 13-inch screen. The next day I packed a backpack, hit the road, heading for Colorado. The mountains were waiting for me, and I was ready to relearn how to live. Today is Tuesday, but it could be any day, because for the first time in decades, days no longer have that metallic taste of obligation. I'm sitting on the wooden bench of a porch in Durango, Colorado, holding a mug of coffee, now cold but still fragrant, and my body is surrendered to a silence that doesn't weigh. The road cutting through the canyon in the distance winds like a line drawn by some lazy god. It seems endless, as if it were saying, "Don't rush, Adam." The sun is bidding farewell to the sky with the elegance of those who don't need to prove anything to anyone. The mountains are painted in shades of burnt orange, dark wine, and that deep blue that only appears in the final minutes of dusk. A silent spectacle. No fireworks, just pure beauty. It's been 3 weeks since I took my vacation, but not the kind with a set return date. It was a vacation from urgency, a vacation from the Adam who lived for someone who never saw the value of the man beside her, a vacation from the weight of being the pillar of a home that had been crumbling from the inside for years. I passed through Boulder, where I hiked the Flatirons trails until my legs begged for rest. In Aspen, I got lost among old books and small cafes, where local ladies offered me pies as if they were hugs. Glenwood Springs was where, in a silly and liberating impulse, I learned to paint. I bought brushes at a hidden shop and started spreading paint on a canvas like someone exorcising ghosts. I painted what I saw, and what I felt. A lake that reflected the stars, the curve of a road without signs, a man alone but not lonely, in front of a bonfire crackling with memories. I also wrote loose texts with no commitment. Pages that might never become a book but turned into a form of healing. Words that came directly from where she tried to dig for emptiness. I learned to bake bread in a rustic inn in Telluride, where the owner, a woman named Agnes with hands of stone and a heart of cloud, said that dough needs time just like us. She taught me that the secret to perfect bread isn't strength, but patience. And somehow I understood there that I too needed to grow slowly, without rushing to become something whole again. I reconnected with silence. Not the suffocating silence from before, where every absence was an invisible knife, but the full silence, the one that listens back, the one that doesn't judge, the one that only exists with you. I went to bed early, woke up to the sound of birds. I forgot the names of some days of the week, and I smiled at that. It was one morning in Ouray, sitting in front of a strong coffee and an open notebook, that I asked aloud, how could I have spent so much time next to someone who only hurt me? The question floated in the air like smoke, but there was no immediate answer. And maybe there didn't need to be, because sometimes pain can't be explained. It just has to be overcome. The important thing is that today, I breathe. I exist. Not as someone's shadow, but as the person who, finally, is whole again. And the best part? Colorado still has roads I don't know. Last night I met a man named Eli in a hidden bar in Pagosa Springs. He had calloused hands, eyes that held 1,000 stories, and a serene way of someone who understood the world too early. He told me about a secret trail that leads to a hidden lake high in the mountains. Nobody goes there at the end of autumn, he said, smiling slightly. But if you do, take a good jacket and time, because some landscapes only reveal themselves to those who wait. I kept the name of the trail. And today, when the lights on the porch go out and night falls completely, I'll plan the route. Maybe I'll go tomorrow. Maybe in 2 days. Who knows? I'm in no hurry, because now every step is mine. Every town, a piece of my soul that I'm reclaiming. Every curve on the map is a reminder that I was made to move forward, not to live stuck in the pain that others left behind. And when they ask me, even if just in thought, if I still hold on to anger, I answer with a smile that can only be learned after the abyss. No, I hold on to lessons. Claire was a hurricane that devastated my past. But it was Colorado that taught me how to rebuild, slowly, with paint, with bread, and with the silence that now is my home. The motor of the world no longer screams in my ear. It whispers, "Keep going. There's still beauty in the unknown."